The meeting was supposed to decide who lived and who didn't. Men in tailored suits sat around the long table, voices low, phones face down, weapons hidden but close. Every word spoken in that room carried weight. And the girl pouring coffee wasn't supposed to matter at all. She stood quietly near the wall, eyes down, hands steady, just another assistant no one bothered to notice, until she spoke, just one sentence. Not loud, not emotional, not threatening. But the moment the words left her mouth, the Mafia boss froze. He didn't shout, didn't ask questions. He canceled the meeting on the spot, chairs scraped, phones vanished, orders were given in whispers, and then he looked at her again. Longer this time, because what she said wasn't a mistake, it was proof. Proof that she knew something no one in that room was supposed to know. Backhand index pointing right, stay till the end, because that one sentence would expose a buried secret, collapse an entire deal, and force the most powerful man in the room to choose between silencing her or protecting her. No one remembered how Lena Morris started working there. That was the point. She wasn't hired through the usual channels. No resume, no interview in the glass office upstairs. She had filled in for a girl who quit mid-shift and then she simply stayed. People assumed she belonged. Management never questioned it. And within weeks, Lena learned exactly where to stand so no one would look at her twice. She was 22, small-framed, with dark hair always pulled back too tightly and clothes chosen for practicality, not attention. She spoke softly, moved carefully, and never interrupted conversations that weren't meant for her. The conference floor of Hawthorne Tower wasn't a place for someone like her. The building sat downtown, all steel and tinted glass, towering over the street like it had something to hide. The upper floors were leased under shell companies and vague names, consulting groups, import firms, private investment entities that didn't advertise. Lena worked for a third-party services company contracted to support executive meetings, which meant coffee, documents, silence. She arrived early that morning as she always did, passing through security with a badge that barely earned a glance. The guard nodded. He never checked her bag. Why would he? She wasn't a threat. The conference room was already half-lit when she entered. A long walnut table stretched across the center, surrounded by high-backed leather chairs. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, but the blinds were partially drawn, muting the skyline into gray shapes. She began setting out cups, aligning them precisely with the folders placed at each seat. Black folders, no logos. No names. At the head of the table sat an empty chair slightly wider than the rest. Lena noticed things like that. At exactly 9:40, the men arrived. Not all at once. Two at a time, sometimes alone, sometimes in quiet conversation. They wore tailored suits and carried themselves with the casual confidence of people used to being obeyed. Phones were placed face down. Jackets were draped carefully over chairs. No one spoke loudly. They didn't need to. Lena kept her eyes down, moving along the perimeter, refilling water, adjusting chairs that didn't need adjusting. She heard fragments of conversation without trying. Port Authority already cleared it. 3 weeks, no delays. If he signs, it's done. Then the room changed. It always did when Victor Kane arrived. There was no announcement, no raised voice, just a subtle shift. Conversations stopped mid-sentence, bodies straightened, attention recalibrated. Lena felt it before she saw him. Victor Kane was in his mid-40s, tall, broad-shouldered, his presence filling the room without effort. His suit was dark, understated, expensive in a way that didn't seek validation. His face was calm, unreadable, with eyes that missed nothing. He took the head seat without acknowledging anyone directly. The meeting began. Lena stood near the wall, hands folded loosely in front of her, gaze fixed just past the table. She had learned how to listen without reacting, how to remember without revealing. The discussion turned precise. Roots, timelines, percentages, risk mitigation. This wasn't her first meeting like this. She had been present for 6 months now, long enough to recognize patterns, long enough to know when something was off. And today, something was off. A man 2 seats down from Victor spoke, sliding a document across the table. "This is the revised plan," he said. "We move the shipment through Barrage Terminal instead. Fewer eyes." Lena's fingers tightened slightly. "Barrage Terminal." Victor scanned the page, expression unchanged. "And the security?" "Handled," the man replied. "Same provider as before." Another man nodded. "No incidents last time." Lena felt a chill crawl up her spine. Last time, her breathing slowed, deliberate. She replayed a memory she never spoke about. A rainy night, a chain-link fence, blue lights in the distance that never came close enough. She told herself it wasn't relevant, but then Victor spoke again. Date. Friday night, 11:40. The room murmured in agreement. Lena took one step forward without realizing it. She stopped herself. "Don't." She moved to refill a coffee cup instead, her hand steady despite the pounding in her chest. Barrage Terminal, Friday, 11:40. Her father's watch had stopped at 11:43. She placed the cup down gently. Victor's gaze flicked briefly in her direction, not at her face but at the movement, then returned to the table. The man continued. "Once it clears, we dissolve the shell and move on." Victor leaned back slightly. "And the witness issue?" The room went quiet. The man hesitated. "There is no witness." Lena's heart slammed against her ribs. That was wrong. She knew it was wrong because she was sitting in that room. The words escaped her before she could stop them. "Sir," she said softly, her voice barely rising above the hum of the air conditioning, "that isn't accurate." Silence hit the room like a dropped glass. Every head turned. Victor's eyes lifted slowly to her face. Lena felt her legs lock, her pulse roaring in her ears. She had spoken, out loud, in a room where she wasn't supposed to exist beyond function. "I'm sorry," she added instinctively, though she didn't step back. "I didn't mean to interrupt." Victor didn't speak. He studied her, once. Then again, the second look was different, focused, deliberate. "What did you say?" he asked calmly. Lena swallowed. She could feel every eye on her now, some curious, some hostile. She had crossed a line. "There was a witness," she said quietly. "At Barrage last time," a man scoffed. "That's impossible." Lena met Victor's gaze, not the man's. "You're sure?" Victor asked. "Yes," she replied. "I'm sure." The room held its breath. Victor leaned forward, fingers steepled. "How would you know that?" Lena hesitated for half a second, then chose the truth that mattered. "Because she was there," Lena said. "And she didn't die." The effect was immediate. Victor's chair scraped back as he stood. "That's enough," he said, voice calm but final. "This meeting is over." Confusion rippled through the room. "Victor," someone began. "Cancel it," he repeated, "all of it." Phones were grabbed, chairs pushed back. Men stood, exchanging uneasy glances. Within moments, the room was empty except for Victor Kane and the girl who had just stopped a multi-million-dollar deal with one sentence. Lena stood frozen near the wall, her heart threatening to tear out of her chest. Victor turned to her. Up close, his eyes were sharper than she expected. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lena," she said. He looked at her wrist, her posture, her face. Then he looked at her again, longer this time. And for the first time since she'd started working there, Lena understood something with absolute clarity. She was no longer invisible. And whatever Victor Kane had seen in her, it had changed everything. The room didn't empty immediately. Men hesitated. That alone was unusual. Victor Kane didn't cancel meetings. He ended them after decisions were made, after deals were sealed, after consequences were calculated. This one had been cut off mid-sentence, mid-agreement, because a girl no one had bothered to notice had spoken up. Phones stayed face down. Jackets weren't picked up right away. Eyes moved between Victor and Evelyn Carter, trying to read which direction the danger now faced. Victor didn't repeat himself. He simply stood there, one hand resting lightly on the back of his chair, gaze steady. "Go," he said again, quieter this time. That was enough. Chairs scraped. Men murmured quick excuses to no one in particular. Within seconds, the room began to clear, the tension draining out in nervous waves. Two men shot Evelyn irritated looks as they passed her, like she had knocked over something expensive and irreplaceable. She didn't react. She stayed where she was, back straight, hands folded in front of her because moving felt dangerous. Because instinct told her that if she tried to disappear now, it would only make things worse. The heavy doors closed, the lock clicked softly. Silence settled. Evelyn's heartbeat sounded impossibly loud in her ears. Victor Kane turned fully toward her. Up close, he was taller than she'd realized. Broader. His presence filled the space not through intimidation but through certainty. This was a man who didn't need to threaten. He expected compliance because the world had taught him to. "You stopped a deal," he said calmly. Evelyn swallowed. "Yes, sir." He tilted his head slightly. "Do you know what kind of deal that was?" "Yes." No hesitation. That earned her another look. Most people rushed to explain, to apologize, to justify themselves into safety. Evelyn didn't. She stood her ground not because she was brave, but because fear had already taught her what panic did to decision-making. Victor gestured toward the table. "Sit." Her stomach tightened. "I'm not part of the meeting." "Neither is anyone else now," he replied. "Sit." She did. The chair felt oversized beneath her, the polished wood cold against her palms. Victor didn't sit across from her. He moved to the side, leaning against the table instead, close enough that she could smell clean cologne and something sharper underneath, metallic, almost like rain on steel. "You said there was a witness," he said. "You didn't say how you know." Evelyn chose her words carefully, because the report that says there wasn't one is wrong. Victor's eyes narrowed. "That report was sealed." "Yes, so you've seen it." "No." "Then how do you know it's wrong?" Evelyn exhaled slowly. "Because I was there." The air shifted. Victor didn't react immediately. He didn't raise his voice or step back, but something hardened behind his eyes like a lock turning. "Where?" he asked. "Barrage Terminal," she said. 3 years ago, late October. Victor straightened. That date wasn't public. "That terminal was shut down that night," he said carefully. "There were no civilians." "That's what they said," Evelyn replied. "But I wasn't a civilian on paper. I was listed as staff." Victor studied her face, searching for cracks. "You don't look like port security." "I wasn't," she said. "I was a night cleaner, contract work, no benefits, no questions." Her fingers curled slightly in her lap as memory pressed in. "I was supposed to be invisible," she added quietly. "I was very good at it." Victor said nothing. "You heard gunshots," he prompted. "Yes." "You saw something?" "Yes." "Enough to get you killed if the wrong people knew," he said. "Yes, that did it." Victor pushed off the table and walked toward the window, turning his back to her. For a moment, Evelyn thought he was done, that she'd said too much. Then he spoke again. "You understand," he said, "that the men who were in this room would kill you without blinking if they thought you were a liability." Her voice stayed steady. "I understand. And yet you spoke." "Yes." "Why?" Evelyn hesitated. "Because this was the moment where the truth mattered. Because the plan they were discussing," she said, "would put someone else in the same place I was." Victor turned slowly. "Someone who wouldn't get out," she finished. Silence followed, long, heavy. Victor looked at her not like a boss assessing risk, but like a man recalibrating an equation he'd believed was already solved. "You've been in this building for months," he said. "Why say something now?" "Because until today," Evelyn replied, "I wasn't sure it was the same people." And now I am." Victor nodded once. "Who else knows?" he asked. "No one," she said. "I made sure of that." "That wasn't the question," he replied calmly. "Who else knows now?" Evelyn understood what he meant. "You," she said. "And whoever you tell." Victor's phone vibrated in his pocket. He glanced at it but didn't answer. "You just made yourself very visible," he said. "I know, and you're not asking for protection," he observed. "No, why?" Evelyn met his gaze. "Because if I ask, it means I'm afraid." Victor studied her for a long moment, then, unexpectedly, he smiled, just slightly, not with humor but with recognition. "That's interesting," he said. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Do you know why I looked at you twice?" Evelyn shook her head. Because the first time, he said, I saw a girl who spoke out of turn. And the second time, I saw someone who understands exactly what happens next. Her pulse spiked. And what is that? Victor straightened. Now, he said, I need to decide whether you're a problem or an asset. Evelyn's throat tightened, but she didn't look away. Either way, he continued, your life doesn't go back to normal after today. She nodded once. I figured. Victor picked up his phone and typed a single message. From this moment on, he said, eyes still on the screen, you don't leave this building alone. Fear flickered, but so did something else. Resolve. Am I being detained? Evelyn asked. Victor finally looked up. No, he said. You're being protected? That sounds like detention, she replied. His lips twitched faintly. It can be both. Footsteps sounded outside the door, controlled, deliberate. Victor gestured toward the chair. Stay seated. The door opened and two men stepped in, not the ones from the meeting. These moved differently. Quieter, more precise, Victor gave them a look. This is Evelyn Carter, she's with me. The words landed like a shield, the men nodded once. Victor turned back to her. You spoke one sentence, he said, and now an entire operation is frozen. He paused. Whatever you know, he added, we're going to finish this conversation. Evelyn felt the weight of the moment settle in her bones. She had wanted to stay invisible. Instead, she had been seen. And Act 2 ended with her realizing that Victor Kane wasn't deciding whether to silence her. He was deciding how far he was willing to go to keep her alive. Evelyn didn't sleep that night. Not because she was afraid of the building, Hawthorne Tower was secure in a way only obscene money could buy, but because she finally had time to think. Too much time. The guest room she'd been placed in was quiet, sterile, designed for people who stayed briefly and never left traces. The bed was too soft. The walls were too clean. Everything smelled faintly of lemon and polish. She sat on the edge of the mattress with her shoes still on, hands clasped tightly between her knees. You don't leave this building alone. Victor Kane's words echoed in her head not as a threat but as a statement of fact. She had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. At 2:14 a.m. there was a knock at the door, not loud, not rushed, controlled. Evelyn stood slowly and opened it. Victor stood in the hallway alone this time. No guards in sight, though she knew better than to believe that meant anything. Walk with me, he said quietly. She nodded. They moved through a private corridor that overlooked the city from above. The lights below looked unreal, tiny, distant, harmless. A different world from the one she had stumbled into. You said Barrage Terminal, Victor began, hands clasped behind his back. Late October, 3 years ago. Yes, that terminal was used for one shipment only, he continued. Off the books, clean on paper. Nothing about it was clean, Evelyn replied. He didn't argue. Tell me exactly what you saw, Victor said. She took a slow breath. I worked nights for a janitorial subcontractor, she began. Cash pay, no questions, the kind of job where you don't exist unless someone decides you do. Victor nodded. He understood that world well. That night I was cleaning the East Wing, she continued. The one near the cargo bay. I wasn't supposed to be there, but someone had spilled fuel near the doors. She paused. I heard shouting, not arguing, orders, short, angry. Victor's pace slowed slightly. I hid, Evelyn said, because I'd learned that if you don't know what's happening, you don't get hurt. Her voice tightened. I was wrong. She described the men, the crates, the gunshots that came too fast, too close together. The way one man fell and didn't get back up, the smell of burned rubber and oil. I saw faces, she said quietly. Not all of them, but enough. Victor stopped walking. Names, he said. She met his gaze. 2 of the men in that meeting today were there. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Who? Evelyn swallowed. Daniel Reis and Mark Calder. Silence dropped heavy between them. Those names mattered. Did they see you? Victor asked. No, she said, but they knew someone had been there. They locked the bay. Set fire to the far end to destroy evidence. And you survived, Victor said. Yes. How? She hesitated. Someone else helped me, she admitted. Victor turned to her sharply. Who? I never saw his face, she said. He wasn't supposed to be there, he panicked. Opened a service door and told me to run. Victor exhaled slowly. Why didn't you come forward? He asked. Evelyn's laugh was hollow. To who? The police, the company, everyone involved had money, power, lawyers. She shook her head. I didn't even have a name anyone would recognize. Victor resumed walking, slower now. And today, he said, you recognized the same plan. Yes, she replied. Same roots, same language, same people. And you spoke, he said. Yes. They reached a private office overlooking the city. Victor gestured for her to sit. You understand what this means, he said. If this comes out, it doesn't just cancel a deal, it exposes my organization. I know, Evelyn said. And if it doesn't come out, Victor continued, then what happened to you becomes something I chose to ignore. She met his eyes. That's your choice. He studied her for a long moment. You don't ask for anything, he said. No money, no protection, no promises. I didn't come here to bargain, she replied. I came here because I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Victor leaned back slightly. Do you know how many people have died because they spoke up at the wrong time? He asked. Yes, Evelyn said. I met some of them. That earned her a long look. Victor's phone buzzed on the desk. He checked the screen and his expression hardened. Someone talked, he muttered. Evelyn's heart skipped. About me? Yes, he said flatly. He typed a message quickly. They're testing my response, he said. Seeing whether I protect you or remove you. Evelyn's chest tightened. And which will it be? Victor stood. That depends, he said, on whether you're willing to finish what you started. She swallowed. Meaning, he said. You don't just tell me, you testify, you document. You put your name on it? Her hands trembled. That would destroy what little anonymity I have, she said. Yes, Victor agreed, but it would also make you untouchable. Or dead, she countered. Victor stepped closer. I can protect you from my people, he said quietly. I can't protect you from half-truths. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly. All her life she had survived by staying small, by being quiet, by pretending she hadn't seen what she saw, but the sentence she spoke had already broken that strategy. What happens to you if I do this? She asked. Victor didn't answer immediately. Then I lose control, he said finally, and I accept the consequences. She opened her eyes. You'd risk your empire, she said. Yes, he replied, because if I don't, it isn't an empire, it's a graveyard. Footsteps echoed outside the office. Victor glanced toward the door. They're moving, he said. Some of them don't want you alive long enough to become a problem. Evelyn stood. Then we're out of time, she said. Victor studied her, really studied her. You spoke one sentence, he said. And now you're asking me to burn everything I built. Evelyn met his gaze. No, she said. I'm asking you to stop pretending it was clean. Silence stretched, then Victor nodded once. Very well, he said. He extended his hand. If you walk this path, he said, there's no turning back. Evelyn looked at his hand, then she took it. And Act 3 ended with both of them understanding the same truth. The meeting had been canceled. But the reckoning had just begun. The building didn't go into lockdown. It went into motion. That was how Evelyn felt at first, not alarms or shouting, but the sudden, quiet efficiency with which Hawthorne Tower changed states. Doors that had been unlocked an hour ago now required clearance. Hallway lights shifted to a softer, dimmer hue. People moved faster, spoke less. Victor Kane walked beside her, stride controlled, expression unreadable. You understand what's happening, he said as they entered a private elevator. Evelyn nodded. They know you didn't shut me down. Yes, Victor replied. And that means they're deciding how much they're willing to lose. The elevator descended in silence. When the doors opened, they stepped into a floor Evelyn hadn't seen before. No windows, no artwork, just glass-walled offices and a constant low hum of servers. This was the nerve center. Men and women sat at terminals, eyes flicking between screens that displayed live feeds, transaction logs, encrypted messages. Victor raised a hand, everything slowed. They've split, he said quietly. Half of them think I'll handle this internally, the other half thinks I've gone soft. Evelyn's chest tightened. And what do the second half do? They remove variables, Victor replied. People, evidence, you. She stopped walking. Victor turned to her immediately. You don't regret speaking, he said. It wasn't a question. No, Evelyn replied. But I didn't expect this many lives to hinge on it. They always did, Victor said. You just weren't allowed to see it. A woman approached mid-30s, sharp eyes, tablet clutched tightly. Victor, she said quietly. Daniel Reyes just cleared out his accounts. Calder's people are mobilizing. Victor exhaled slowly. They're making their move. Evelyn's heart raced. Against you. Against control, Victor corrected. They think if they act fast enough, they can force my hand. And can they? Evelyn asked. Victor looked at her. That depends on whether I choose stability or truth. Gunfire echoed faintly from somewhere below. Evelyn flinched. Victor didn't. He turned to the woman. Release the internal audit, all records tied to Barrage. The woman hesitated. That will, I know what it will do, Victor said evenly. Do it. She nodded and rushed away. Evelyn stared at him. You're really doing this? Yes, Victor replied. Because once the files are public, killing you won't fix anything. Public? Evelyn repeated. You mean law enforcement. And regulators and media, Victor said. I'm flooding the system. The room shifted again, screens filled with alerts. Names Evelyn recognized from the meeting began appearing, flagged, frozen, locked out. This will destroy them, she said. Victor shook his head. No, this will expose them. Destruction comes later. A sharp crack echoed from the hallway. This one was closer. Victor's jaw tightened. They're done waiting, he said. Two guards appeared at the far end of the floor, moving fast. Victor, one said urgently, we have a breach on level 12. Evelyn's pulse spiked. That's where the elevators connect. Victor nodded. They're trying to isolate us. He turned to Evelyn. You need to leave, he said. She stared at him. You just said killing me won't fix anything. True, Victor replied, but fear doesn't listen to logic. I'm not running, she said. This isn't running, he snapped quietly. This is surviving long enough for the truth to matter. She swallowed hard. And you? She asked. Victor didn't answer right away. He looked around the room, the infrastructure, the people who trusted him, the system he'd spent decades building. I stay, he said. If I leave, they'll fill the vacuum with chaos. Footsteps thundered closer. Victor grabbed a small drive from a drawer and pressed it into her palm. This is everything, he said. If something happens to me, you take this to the authorities. It's enough to finish it. Her throat tightened. You're asking me to be the last piece. Yes, he replied, because you already are. A gunshot shattered glass somewhere down the hall. Victor stepped in front of her instinctively. Go, he ordered. Evelyn hesitated just for a moment. Then she did something she'd never done before. She trusted someone powerful enough to betray her. She ran. The stairwell was narrow and cold, lit by harsh fluorescent lights. Evelyn's breath came fast as she descended, the sounds of chaos echoing above her, shouting, alarms, the unmistakable rhythm of violence. She reached the street level and burst into the night air. The city looked the same. Traffic flowed. People laughed. Someone argued into a phone on the sidewalk. No one knew an empire was tearing itself apart 10 floors above them. A black sedan screeched to a halt nearby. The door opened. Evelyn Carter, a voice called, "Get in." She froze. The man inside wore a suit she recognized from the meeting. Daniel Reyes, her heart pounded. You should have stayed invisible, he said calmly. Victor made a mistake choosing you. She backed away slowly. Reyes sighed. You don't understand. If you disappear now, this all goes away. Evelyn's hand tightened around the drive in her pocket. No, she said, it doesn't. Reyes's smile faded. Then you leave me no choice. Before he could move, headlights flared behind him. Another car slammed into the sedan's side, metal crunching loudly. Men poured out Victor's people. Reyes was dragged away, shouting as the sedan was surrounded. Evelyn sank against the wall, shaking. One of the guards approached her. "Victor said you'd try to leave quietly." "Is he?" she started. "He's alive," the guard said. "For now." Evelyn closed her eyes. The city hummed on, indifferent. Above her, power was collapsing, and there was no stopping it now. Act 4 ended with the truth released, loyalties shattered, and Evelyn standing at the edge of a world that would never be quiet again. Act 5 would decide what survived the fallout and what justice actually cost. The city didn't wake up to chaos. It woke up to confusion. Evelyn learned that later, watching the news from a small, borrowed apartment on the north side of town. No explosions, no manhunts on the evening broadcast. Just careful language and clipped headlines. Federal task force raids multiple financial firms' executives step down amid internal investigations. Unsealed records reveal years of undisclosed operations. No names at first. That came later. She sat on the edge of the couch, hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched, eyes fixed on the screen as analysts speculated and anchors spoke in cautious tones. The truth was moving, but slowly, like a heavy door finally opening after years of pressure. The drive sat on the table in front of her. She hadn't handed it over herself. Victor's people had done that within hours of her escape, delivering copies to multiple agencies at once. Redundancy, insurance. A tactic learned from men who survived by assuming betrayal. Her phone buzzed, unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "It's done," the voice said, a woman's voice, calm, professional. "The files were authenticated, there's no putting them back now." Evelyn swallowed. "And Victor?" A pause. "He surrendered," the woman said. "Voluntarily." The word hit harder than Evelyn expected. "He could have disappeared," she said quietly. "Yes," the woman replied. "He chose not to." Victor Kane stood in a concrete hallway that smelled faintly of disinfectant and cold metal. No windows, no entourage, no illusion of control. He handed over his watch, his phone, his cufflinks, objects that had once defined his reach. The guard catalogued them without expression. "You understand the charges," the agent said. Victor nodded. "I do. And you're waiving extradition?" "Yes." "Why?" Victor considered the question. "Because," he said finally, "running would mean I didn't learn anything." The agent studied him for a moment, then nodded. Weeks passed. The city adjusted. Deals that once moved in shadows were frozen. Names disappeared from boards and resurfaced in court filings. Men who had believed themselves untouchable suddenly learned the weight of public records and sworn testimony. Evelyn testified once, just once. Behind closed doors, no cameras, no crowd, she spoke plainly. Slowly, she didn't embellish, she didn't dramatize, she told them what she saw. That was enough. When it was over, a man in a suit thanked her and told her she could go. "Is that it?" she asked. "For you," he said. "Yes." Life didn't transform overnight. Evelyn still took the bus, still worked quiet jobs. Still flinched when someone raised their voice too suddenly. But something fundamental had changed. She no longer felt the need to disappear. The scar on her wrist stayed visible now, not as a statement but as a fact. When people noticed, she didn't rush to cover it. It had stopped defining her. One afternoon, months later, she stood outside Hawthorne Tower. The building was quieter, emptier. A for lease sign hung where glass once gleamed with purpose. She looked up at the windows and felt nothing. No fear, no anger, just distance. Victor's trial wasn't dramatic. No speeches, no grandstanding. He pled guilty to enough charges to ensure real consequences and provided testimony that finished dismantling what remained of the network. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, Victor stood. "I believed silence was stability," he said. "I was wrong. Silence was decay." The courtroom was still. "I benefited from crimes I didn't personally order," he continued. "And I allowed others to believe they were untouchable because I was." He paused. "One person refused to stay quiet," he said, and that changed everything. He didn't look toward Evelyn. He didn't need to. The sentence was measured, fair, heavy. When the gavel fell, Victor didn't react. He had expected it. Years later, Evelyn would be asked about him in an interview she almost declined. The journalist leaned forward. Do you think he redeemed himself? Evelyn considered the question carefully. No, she said. I think he took responsibility. Isn't that the same thing? She shook her head. Redemption asks for forgiveness, responsibility doesn't. The journalist nodded slowly. Evelyn moved again eventually, not to hide, just to grow. She studied systems, how they break, how they protect themselves, how silence becomes policy. She worked with advocacy groups that helped people who'd seen too much and been told to forget it. She spoke when it mattered, quietly, precisely, the way she always had. On an ordinary evening, walking home from work, Evelyn passed a small cafe. Inside, people laughed over coffee, a meeting of friends, a life untouched by shadows. She paused for a moment, then kept walking. The world hadn't become safe, but it had become honest, and that was enough. Because one sentence, spoken softly by a girl no one noticed, had been enough to cancel a meeting, fracture an empire, and prove a simple truth. Power doesn't always fall to the loudest voice. Sometimes it bends for the one who refuses to stay silent. And that was the legacy Evelyn carried forward, not as a warning, but as proof.